Coming up on Network Africa. Over 50 refugees fleeing the Taliban in Afghanistan arrive in Uganda as Rwanda hosts dozens of Afghan schoolgirls. Troops encircle militants in Mozambique's northern Cabo Delgado ahead of a last major military push against Islamic State-linked insurgents. 2 police officers and an unidentified shooter killed in armed confrontation near the French embassy in Tanzania. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Teniola Shoboale. The first group of 51 evacuees from Afghanistan has arrived in Uganda. Uganda's foreign ministry said in a statement the group landed at Entebbe International Airport aboard a private chartered flight. The ministry says the group is transiting through Uganda and will move on to the US and other countries. The evacuees include men, women and children who have undergone COVID-19 testing and will go into isolation. The evacuation followed the US government's request to Uganda to take in some of the people fleeing the crisis in Afghanistan since the Taliban takeover. Last week, a Ugandan junior government official said that Uganda was to take 2,000 Afghan refugees at the request of the US government. Uganda hosts more than 1 million refugees who have fled several conflicts and other disasters across Eastern Africa. Halima Athumani is the VOA's reporter in Uganda. She joins us now for more on this. Halima, last week we were told Uganda would be taking in 2,000 Afghan refugees, but just 51 have arrived. When can we expect more to come?
Hi, so it is a bit difficult at the moment. We are still not sure who is providing the figures or numbers in regards to the arrivals. One, remember last week the state minister, or what you're calling the junior minister, announced and said we shall be receiving 2,000. Uganda will be receiving 2,000 Afghan evacuees. So they are not even calling them refugees. So if you call them refugees, they'll say no, these are not refugees, these are evacuees. And then mid last week, again, the junior minister again told us, actually told VOA in particular, that they will be receiving 145 refugees. Again, this morning we wake up to a tweet by the minister, by the government spokesperson of Onopondo, and he informs the world that Uganda has received 51 evacuees. So we are not still sure if this is it or there is more, but all we know is that they say that there will be another plane. We are still not sure how many at the moment will be arriving in Uganda. So I guess it's just going to be a game of wait and see.
Yeah, but so far the ministry says the group is transiting through Uganda. That's what we know. And they're eventually to move on to the US and other countries. But what exactly is the government's plan with resettling these, like you said, evacuees?
I think Uganda's role in this is just to host them for the period within which the US government will be able to clear them for them to move on or transit to other countries. At the moment, they have, on arrival this morning at Entebbe Airport, where they arrived via a chartered plane or by a chartered plane, they were taken in 3 buses led by a police patrol van. And we're taken to one of the hotels in Entebbe called one of the Imperial Hotels in Entebbe. So that is where they will be staying. And what we know is that it is the US government that is actually going to foot the costs and the bills for the period within which they will be here. The government says it could take about a few weeks. Others say it could take over a couple of months. We are still not sure. In the beginning, they say 3 months. But then yesterday, I think when I was speaking to a few officials, were telling me it could be between 3 to 6 months. So they will be here in transit, heading out to other countries, but all we know is that I think Uganda is just to host them, let them stay in Uganda, let them stay in Uganda for the meantime until when they have their papers and documents processed for future transits.
All right, then, Alima, thanks so much for clearing that up for us.
Welcome.
In the meantime, Rwanda will be hosting dozens of schoolgirls being relocated from Afghanistan following the Taliban takeover of their country by Taliban militants. Shabana Bazij Rashik, the founder of a privately run school of leadership Afghanistan, said on Tuesday that about 250 students, staff and family members were en route to Rwanda through Qatar to begin a semester abroad for the entire student body. Rwanda's Education Ministry sent a message of welcome to the community. Ms. Basija Sheikh said they hope to resettle temporarily and wanted to return to Afghanistan when the situation permitted. Afghans have been growing desperate to leave their country in fear of living under Taliban rule, and thousands have been evacuated to other countries. The Taliban, which enforced a strict version of Islamic law when they ran Afghanistan before 2001, retook full control of the country more than a week ago. Human rights activist Olatunji Lanre Barowa joins us now for more discussions on Africa's response to the Afghan crisis. Thank you so much for your time on Network Africa.
Thank you for having me.
Rwanda has become the latest African country to offer refuge to these evacuees. Why do you think this is? One would expect that, Nigeria, which is Africa's biggest economy, would have been at the forefront of this humanitarian gesture.
That's flattering, actually, but you have to look at the historical antecedents to that. If you remember, a few years ago, Rwanda was at the forefront of receiving African migrants that were repatriated from Israel, during the crisis in Israel at that time. And several migrants who were repatriated from across the Mediterranean, some of them were taken to Rwanda. Rwanda opened its doors for these migrants. So when you look at those antecedents, and you also have to look at organization and foreign policy articulation and stability in Rwanda. And the Rwandan government has been the poster boy of fast-paced development on the continent for some years now, and it has been able to win a lot of friends in the diplomatic community. So that's very important to note when you analyze that. If you look at Nigeria on the other way, on the other side, you see that Nigeria has had a lot of foreign policy spats with neighboring countries, with ECOWAS, with African Union over the last couple of years. We have poor articulation of our foreign policy. We don't even know what the Nigerian foreign policy, the strategic worldview of our foreign policy is as of today. If you look at our blockage of our border in ECOWAS over I think a couple of months or years ago, which just ended recently. If you look at even our hesitation to sign the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, you have to look at the foreign policy posture of each country and look at the crisis that has engulfed several parts of Nigeria. If Nigeria is at the forefront of receiving, people being evacuated from possible conflict, and you look at Nigeria hosting several millions of IDPs internally, and you have pockets of crisis in different regions in Nigeria. See, there's a part of Nigeria that is not different from the conflict these people are fleeing from in Afghanistan at the moment. And you also have issues with kidnapping all over the place. You don't want to bring people out of fire into the frying pan. That's the way I see that. But also you have to respect the fact that Rwanda has been at the forefront of some of these. They have been in the lead in diplomatic circles in recent years.
Uganda has the biggest camp in Africa. It also hosts more than 1 million refugees who have fled several conflicts and other disasters across Eastern Africa. How do you think taking in more refugees will impact this country's economy and its humanitarian quest?
I listened to the Voice of America journalist earlier, and if you recall, she said that right now it has not been established that they will be refugees in Uganda. It is being stated that they are being evacuated out of Kabul, out of Afghanistan, temporarily to be housed in Uganda until their papers are sorted out, and America will decide whether they are coming into their home country or into some partner nations across the world. So that's the world view that we have. The information is that they are only going to stay in Uganda temporarily. And also you have to look at the fact that they don't happen by accident. And it is something that happened at bilateral level. The United States government must have reached out to the Ugandan government, and they must have expressed willingness to accommodate or host these people for the time being. It might take a couple of months, like the VOA journalist just said to us. So, but basically, I think if America is hosting people being evacuated from Afghanistan, Afghans in Uganda, they will also foot the bills for these people for the period of time they will be there. Aids and support will come to the Ugandan government.
All right, then, human rights activist Olatunji Lanre Barua, thank you so much for your thoughts on the program.
Anytime, anytime. Thank you for hosting me.
Away from the Afghan crisis, Rwandan and Mozambican troops have reportedly encircled militants in Mozambique's northern Cabo Delgado province ahead of a last major military push against the Islamic State-linked insurgents. The forces are surrounding the militants in the areas of Siri 1 and Siri 2. The military push comes barely 4 days after the joint forces seized Mbau, another key insurgent stronghold, after a fierce battle. Military sources reported that more than 100 people were released from jihadist captivity and dozens of militants were killed. On August the 8th, the joint forces drove out insurgents from Musimboa, the Praia and Port City that had been the headquarters of the militants for more than 3 years. And Niger's army says it has killed 100 jihadists in an operation in a southwestern region near the Burkina Faso border. The operation in the Torodi area was in response to an attack that killed 19 security officers on a resupply mission on the 31st of July. Another team that later came to rescue was hit by an explosive device. The Nigerian army said in a statement that it had aimed to search for and neutralize those responsible for the ambush and bomb attack. Officers had also destroyed their ammunition, vehicles and tricycles. Western Niger, especially the three-border zone, has been plagued by armed attacks attributed to jihadist groups based in northern Mali since 2017. And now Nigeria has signed a military technical cooperation agreement with Russia. The deal was signed by Nigeria's Minister of Defense, Major General Bashir Magashi, who is on an official visit to Russia. Representatives of the Nigerian Army and Air Force, senior military officers and officials of the Nigerian Ministry of Defense were all present at the signing ceremony. This new agreement terminates the earlier agreement between the two countries signed back in 2001. This now provides a legal framework for the supply of military equipment, provision of after-sales services, training of personnel, and technology transfer. Still to come on the program. The World Health Organization says nearly 1.3 billion people globally suffer from hypertension, a silent killer often driven by obesity and poverty. That's in a moment. Stay with us. Stay with us. regards to health matters, the Health Ministry in Côte d'Ivoire says the first person to test positive for Ebola since 1994 has recovered. The 18-year-old woman from Guinea had traveled to Abidjan and then tested positive for the virus. The country immediately held a vaccination drive to cover people who had contact with the visitor and security forces on the border with Guinea. The woman now has 2 negative tests and her isolation has been lifted. The Democratic Republic of Congo and Guinea itself are the other 2 African countries affected by Ebola this year. Some updates from the COVID-19 pandemic now. Zimbabwe is extended by 2 weeks a strict lockdown put in place to contain a deadly third wave of the virus. The lockdown has been put in place since June to control the spread of the virus. A dusk to dawn curfew will remain in place and restaurants are still closed to sit-in customers. Information Minister acknowledged that while there had been notable decrease in infections, more needed to be done to reduce the numbers further. The government recorded 319 new cases and 27 deaths on Tuesday. There have been 123,320 infections and 4,320 coronavirus-related deaths reported in the country since the pandemic began. Two security matters, 2 police officers and an unidentified shooter have been killed in an armed confrontation near the French embassy in the Tanzanian city of Dar es Salaam. The motive of the attack is not clear, but the country's police chief, Simon Siro, confirmed the deaths. According to him, the police is now working to find out the shooter's identity and motive. Eyewitness videos posted on social media show the moment he was taken down by a sniper bullet just a few meters from the front entrance of the French embassy. Morocco has rejected reasons put forward by Algeria in its decision to cut diplomatic relations with its North African neighbor. Algerian Foreign Minister Ramtan Lamara announced his country's decision on Tuesday to cut all ties with Morocco for what it called hostile acts. Algiers accused its neighbor of providing support to members of the MAC separatist movement, which is fighting for self-determination in the Kabila region of Algeria. MAC is believed to have started forest fires in the country and is also accused of involvement in the killing of a man mistaken for an arsonist. In response, the Moroccan Ministry of Foreign Affairs said Morocco rejects this unjustified decision. The pretext is fallacious and absurd. The Moroccan kingdom will, however, remain a credible and loyal to the Algerian people and will continue to act with wisdom. The Algerian Foreign Ministry had previously summoned the Moroccan ambassador over remarks the Moroccan envoy to the UN had made backing the separatist movement in Algeria. The UN has reportedly agreed to a request by the Sudanese government for Ethiopian forces to leave the Abyei region as tensions between the 2 countries escalate over the Nile Dam and a disputed border region. In April, Sudan demanded the replacement of the Ethiopian peacekeepers after it accused Addis Ababa of amassing troops in the eastern Al-Fashaga region, an area disputed by both sides. The UN authorized the deployment of UNISFA to the disputed Abyei region between Sudan and South Sudan days before the independence of South Sudan in 2011. The 2 countries are also involved in a dispute over the hydroelectric Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam built on River Nile. Sudan relies on water from the river. UN High Commissioner for Refugees Filippo Grandi is calling for concerted efforts to find lasting solutions to the conflicts in Sudan and South Sudan. He made this call following the conclusion of a 3-day visit to the 2 countries. Nearly 7 million people have been forcibly displaced from their homes following the unrest in the countries.
With nearly 7 million Sudanese and South Sudanese displaced within and outside their countries, finding solutions based on peace and development is crucial for their future. UN High Commissioner for Refugees Filippo Grandi traveled as part of efforts to find lasting solutions to displacement in the two countries. This is Regina. She's finally come home to South Sudan. She fled fighting when she was young and found refuge in neighboring Sudan.
My journey here was not easy. I had very little money on me, but on the way we were a group of us, so I would depend on other people for food. If there is somewhere I can be settled, I will start from there with my children.
A fragile peace is slowly returning to South Sudan after years of the conflict. Since the signing of the revitalized peace agreement in 2018, close to 300,000 South Sudanese refugees have spontaneously returned to their country, while over 1 million IDPs have returned home.
What are the solutions? How can people return home or be integrated where they find themselves in a manner that is sustainable, that is durable? It is a strategy that would like to attract investments, resources, and that will require, of course, stability and security.
Morning, Mr. President. Good morning.
October 2020. The governments of Sudan and South Sudan, with the support of the regional body, Intergovernmental Authority on Development and UNHCR, launched the development of a solutions initiative for refugees, IDPs, returnees, and host communities in Sudan and South Sudan.
This is a region that is very fragile from that point of view, is very exposed to forced displacement. Looking at solutions will hopefully turn the tide and become a very important contribution to the peace efforts that are already being carried out by the political leaderships.
The UNHCR is working with both governments, regional leaders and partners to help returnees and those still displaced live in safety and dignity.
South Africa's Justice Department has confirmed that Mozambique's former Finance Minister Manuel Chang has been handed over to Interpol to be extradited home instead of to the US. The decision has led to diplomatic tension and a last-minute attempt to stop him being sent to Mozambique. The US Embassy in Pretoria issued a statement saying it noted with great disappointment that South Africa had decided to extradite Mr. Chang to Mozambique, despite having received its extradition request before that of Mozambique. On Monday, 19 people went on trial in Mozambique's capital, Maputo, including Ndambi Guebuza, the son of former Mozambican President Armando Guebuza. Guinea-Bissau's President Umaro Embalo has said the former army chief will not be handed over to the United States, where he is wanted for alleged drug trafficking offences. In the words of the president, no citizen will be brought to justice in another country. He adds that the general could move around the country as he pleased. Last week, the U.S. authorities announced a $5 million bounty for information leading to the arrest of Antonio Ndijai. The local media reports that news of the bounty has been greeted with anxiety by the army. The U.S. authorities indicted General Ndijai in 2013 on accusations of plotting to traffic cocaine and sell weapons to Colombian rebels. The U.S. State Department says he has been subjected to a UN travel ban since May 2012 because of his participation in a coup that year. The World Health Organization says nearly 1.3 billion people globally suffer from hypertension, a silent killer often driven by obesity that increases the risk of heart disease, stroke and kidney disease. In a joint study published in The Lancet, the WHO and Imperial College London says hypertension can be easily diagnosed by monitoring blood pressure and treated with low-cost drugs, but half of affected people are unaware of their condition, which is left untreated. The study adds that while hypertension rates have changed little in 30 years, the caseload has shifted to lower income countries, as wealthy nations have brought it largely under control.
In low-income countries, it is really very alarming. Coming back to that, this is one of the most deadly diseases. So if we look at control rates in Africa, Central and South Asia, and some of the Eastern European countries, we see that they are as low as 10% for women and men in these countries. So these are really areas for improvement. We know that the treatment is cheap, it's low-cost medicines, but there is a need to include them in the UHC, so this is not a cost for the single patient and their families. It has to be covered by the insurance system.
And that's the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Teniola Shabuale. Bye.